this was mid-70s. And we'd sit down and he would tell me how my work took its place in the long line of artists who've been doing this for thousands of years. How the kind of imagery I was working with and the graphics and the icons I was using in my imagery had been used for thousands of years. And he just opened me up to that path. I literally felt like I was stepping onto a path that thousands of artists had walked before, and that the artists will walk behind. And I was just taking my place in that line. I wasn't this unique person inventing things. I was just joining the brotherhood of artists, the brotherhood and the sisterhood of artists who've been doing this. So it was quite an eye-opening experience to realize, hey, I wasn't, at the cutting edge. I was just part of a long lineage. And one wonderful thing he did was he gave me a key to the inner sanctum of the Art and Architecture Library, which was, kept locked up. And it was a little tiny room, maybe about the size of this, if we squared it off, and with books the whole way around, floor to ceiling, with a little doorway that you enter into, and then you're in this square room of, solid books the whole way. And on the bindings of the books was calligraphy, rather than English words. And, I couldn't read the Chinese or Japanese calligraphy, so I would just look at the shapes of the calligraphy and pick the ones that looked the most beautiful, and just pull them off the shelf and open it up and see what was inside. And it was like, I opened it up, and the angels sang. It was the gardens of Kyoto, Japan. It was Japanese gardens, one after the other. And when I saw that, it was so reaffirming, because for years I've been photographing rocks. Rocks was my main image. And so here, all of a sudden, was a culture who dealt with rocks and stones in such a refined and elegant and elevated and respectful way, in a sacred way. Rocks and stones placed in these gardens in just absolute perfection. So for me it was almost like it reaffirmed my faith in mankind, in the evolution of human beings as capable of expressing themselves aesthetically. It was the most refined experience that I'd had yet as an artist, to see that. And I kind of resolved right at that point, I gotta go. I gotta go. I gotta see what it's like to physically be in the space of a garden where rocks are given that much reverence. Okay? Where, it's almost like, it's when you see something like that, you know you have to do it. So, I took my family, my little kids, who were 5 years old, I think they were about this high, and I said, if I don't go now, I'll never go. They were still little and little enough to scoop them up and carry them in your arm. And I took them to Japan for a year and dedicated myself to photographing gardens in Kyoto for a solid year. I had done a previous trip to Japan for, I think, 2 months, and in that time period I knew that I had to be there for the changing of the seasons. It was completely clear to me that just sampling one season wasn't going to do it for me. I had to go through the full cycle. So I put them in kindergarten, and my days were free to shoot, and in the evenings I would ride the train to Osaka and take a fast elevator up a high-rise and teach English. But my daytimes were free. I had a bicycle, had my camera gear on the back, tripod, and camera bag, and I would just bike all over Kyoto to as many gardens as I could go to. Kyoto was the imperial capital of Japan for over 1,000 years, from from the year 800, or 794, to 1890. So just a little over 1,000 years. And as the imperial capital, it attracted the arts that revolved around the imperial court. One of which was garden making. Garden making is treated as an art form in Japan, very much so. And in Kyoto, there's over 2,000 temples, most of which have their garden as well. So, given that, if you want to make the rounds, you've got to be there a few years, really, to get to them all. So I was there 1 year. I kind of distilled it down to about 50 gardens, which I went to repeatedly and photographed them through the changing seasons. Let's see, okay, so basically what I consider Kyoto is as truly my training as a garden photographer. That was my boot camp or beyond art school. I think you can only get so far in art school, then you have to dedicate yourself to something with even more fervency. And for me, it was going to Japan. And shooting almost every day. I really dedicated myself to it. And while I was there, I was very fortunate to join a group of photographers who met, I think we met about once every few weeks, once a month, with Katsuhiko Mizuno. And Mizuno is one of the, I would say he's the foremost photographer of gardens in Kyoto. He has many books out on the gardens of Kyoto through the seasons, and you can look them up online. But we would meet at a little Zen temple, and it was just, right out of the Kurosawa movie. Total, tatami mats, sliding screens, we're all on the, we're all, like this on the tatami mats. Our prints are out in front of us. He comes around, one photographer at a time. Samurai critique, don't mince words, this works, this doesn't work, zip, 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 on to the next one. And it was quite an intense experience. It wasn't a soft experience, it was like, going right in there, but I learned so much. And basically, at the end of my year there, he took me aside and encouraged me to go the route of the photographer, to become a professional photographer. So I'm very thankful for that. And that's basically what I did. I came back to the US and became a garden photographer. But before I get back to the West, something about Japan. I learned a lot of things in those gardens. And basically, I think I learned how to see. And I learned what I did was I developed a kind of a recipe, a list of ingredients for how to see. And I developed them as a result of experiencing them. And some things are very, formal oriented, like simplicity of line. And I'll go through a box of prints here and just, in fact, we can do that right now. I want to show you this Kyoto portfolio. Simplicity of line, and by that, and these are things that I have incorporated into my photography. Even I learned them there and I've kept them through the years. Simplicity of line is, what I mean by that is if you took a brush, a Japanese brush, and dipped it into a bowl of black ink, and then just went whoosh. It's like you're cutting with a sword, drawing a sword and taking a cut. A very simple, straightforward line. And that's what I'm looking for in my images. And I base that, I use that as the foundation of my images. So pretty much in everything I see, unless it's a straight pattern shot, like a field pattern, I'm looking for the line. I'm looking for the simple line that is the foundation and holds the image together. And what this means is going into three-dimensional space, the space of a garden, seeing it in 2D, and drawing the line. Okay, much as a designer would when they're laying out a garden and figuring out sight lines, things like that. but it requires flipping 3D into 2D, just as we flip 2D into 3D.